Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia, and I live next to a train line, so if you hear train noises, sorry about that. But we're in hard lockdown here, actually. We have been since early July, and it's pretty intense. So the rest of the country is doing the usual Aussie things, going to the beach and the emus and then the spiders. But in Melbourne, we're in our houses. Well, actually, the spiders still happen here, but but as always, the maps are getting me through. So I should say that I didn't actually submit a PCD, but I guess my abstract kind of had that vibe. So here I am. So I hope my talk is practical, but I think it gets the right balance. But first, just the tiniest bit of background. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Anton. I hand draw illustrated maps with color pencil and pen. And in 2014, I began a very large map of North America. And I thought it would take 6 months, but this kind of spiraled out of control. And this vast project took me almost 5 years. And it took over my life, but it also led to a career that I adore. So thank you, you big, endless map, you. I will always love you. It is called North America, Portrait of a Continent. And as the map grew, attention on it grew too, including a large number of people who wanted prints. So I had to start building a business plan kind of late in the story. And I finally finished it in early 2019. And so began a long phase with almost no map making, in which I had to make a plan to print and distribute a very large map to a very large customer base who are at a very large distance from me in Australia. So let's see if I can make all that practical for you. Now, at the last NACIS in Tacoma, I was making good progress on the release, but I still had a way to go. And that pushed the release into 2020, which, as you might expect, added a few layers of complexity. So it's that story that I'm going to tell you today, the launch. And I hope that within that, I can share some things that might be helpful for your own business. So firstly, before I was ever thinking about tax or e-commerce, I was just building interest in the piece. And I guess one silver lining of a map taking this long is that it gave me time to build that audience, that anticipation. But your project doesn't have to be a behemoth like mine. I mean, you just want to be putting yourself out there, growing, listening, connecting, pushing your limits out and learning to tell your story. And even in 2020, you can still be out there in whatever form is available, which is why we're here. So these are the basics that I had in play at the start of this year. I had a map finished. I had an audience, including an email list of people interested in prints. For years, in lieu of a store, I just had a form on my website where you could sign up to know when they were ready. This is so important. This list meant that I could launch with pre-orders, allowing me to get quantities and systems scaled right and not be overwhelmed on day one. So depending on your situation, a crowdfunding campaign could work here as well. And I also knew the basic specs of the prints. In my case, offset printing some and a limited set of Giclée fine art prints as well. And by the way, there are many considerations with sizing your print, from the printing method itself to framing standards to freight. Consider them all. Sometimes 1 inch too big can make a big difference to these things, so do the homework. And also, you'll probably run many proofs, seeing how the details look at different sizes. That's how my house looked during proof time. I like coat hangers and clips actually work pretty well to hang them up. So there you go. So anyway, I have map, audience, the print specs. What next? E-commerce. Now, I'm still in early days. I won't discuss wholesale, licensing, or even Amazon. I haven't done any of that yet. Currently, I only sell through my website and distribute myself from home. And when you're getting started, I really recommend keeping it simple. So you want to think about your website kind of in two halves. One is e-commerce and the store, and then the other is your normal website, the blog, the galleries, etc. And sometimes these are quite different platforms. So if you're expecting a lot of sales, especially international sales, you want a really good e-commerce solution. And if you're more technically literate or you want to hire some developers, you might go for a WordPress WooCommerce mix, maybe. But if you're basic like me, Shopify is pretty amazing. I think anyone can get their head around it, and it does them and do it themselves. However, very important, Shopify is not great as a normal blog website, in my opinion. I kept my main website all on Weebly with its nice drag and drop builder, and I just linked to Shopify for my store. Did my homework about SEO, got the images right, and bam, website, store, done. Next. What about tax? So, this has all been uncharted territory for me. Originally, I thought I would print the posters in the USA because that's where most of the customers are, rather than shipping them all from Australia. Makes sense, no? I was even lining up some companies to do that. But then I asked an incredibly important question. What about tax? And this question is great because when you ask it, you start to touch on the core of your options as a business and how it all works. About your jurisdiction, those of your customers, the annual business cycle, your obligations, company structure, all that kind of stuff, all those fundamentals. So one stressful day in January, I asked myself, if I print 2,000 maps in Minnesota and start shipping them to customers from there, what about tax? And I learned that this would establish a sales tax nexus within that state, adding countless complexities, including the possibility that I would need to form an LLC, which is normal stuff for Americans, but a real challenge for foreigners. Now, this is basic stuff, but you don't know until you know. So I realized, oh, wow, okay. My easiest option is going to be to print and export from right here in Melbourne. Now, selling overseas, provided you aren't doing crazy numbers and exceeding thresholds where you have to form entities there, usually what happens is your customer pays their local taxes via your shipping provider when the goods arrive in the form of import duties. So you just have to be upfront about that on your store. Canadians and Europeans, they know a lot about duties. And that extra payment at delivery is a barrier to those markets, but it isn't a dead end. Just be upfront. I've got a note on my cart page about it. It's all there on my FAQ, etc. And by the way, you can set up systems where they pay the duties in store. It's called DDP. I haven't gone down that direction, but there is an option. Anyway, lucky for me, the duty threshold is very high in the US, my biggest market. So US customers don't pay any duties and no tariffs either. I'm not aware of printed maps having tariffs in any countries. However, globes often do. So that's interesting. Anyway, at this point, I'm feeling about as far away as ever from the magical art of making maps. My whiteboard is starting to have the always sunny meme energy. Actually, it still does. And I've got 15 tabs open about South Dakota versus Wayfair. And I'm thinking, man, I thought I was doing this so I could draw maps. But let me just say, if you take the time to get this stuff right, if you do it right, learn your business, you can get back to your craft sooner. I mean, this is still a job. Next, shipping, really important. I ended up choosing an express courier, UPS, and not because I didn't want to try standard post, which is cheaper, in Australia Post, the USPS, but because even my smallest map was so big that Australia Post wouldn't take it. So I was forced down the courier direction, which actually became a lifesaver when COVID hit, because they kept delivering at normal speeds while national postal services around the world ground to a halt. So we're almost at the launch. It's about February now, but just one theme here. So I explore many angles of a topic. I go full this guy, but I often end up with the simplest solution. I considered offering framing myself and then realized that was crazy. I considered building my website from scratch on WordPress, but went with something simpler. I considered printing and distributing with a third party in another country and then realized, man, I'll just do this right here at home. So it's so important to explore, to understand the landscape and to learn, but never lose sight of the value of keeping it simple, especially in small business. Okay, so I'm skipping a lot of things, finding the offset printer, my accountant, the mailing tubes, all that stuff. There's a lot, but basically I was finally ready. And guess when it was? Mid-March 2020, the moment that the whole world changed. And I was ready to go, but suddenly I didn't know if the world I had designed my systems for would even exist in a week, let alone a month. I mean, I was worried about there being groceries in the supermarket, let alone if I could ship hundreds or thousands of maps around the world. And the news was obviously increasingly horrifying. I was basically in a constant panic while trying to finish my store, worried about my friends and family, worried about everyone around the world, worried about money. Restrictions started hitting businesses, and I worried about my suppliers. I would call up the mailing tube company and be like, "Are you guys going to be operating next week?" And they'd say, "I don't know." Nobody knew anything. The exchange rate was all over the place. UPS called me, urging me to hurry up and start shipping because my negotiated rates were in jeopardy. And there were many restless nights, anxiety. I remember a dream where rain on the roof turned into a swarm of bats, just pelting the house in the dark while I sheltered down. Um, then the Prime Minister closed our borders, and it was like, oh my God. And I was faced with a big life decision. So there's the train there. I was faced with a big life decision. Persevere, open the store to pre-orders, but risk being unable to fulfill them, refunding a lot of money, or delay the launch and hope that the crisis blows over soon. Well, what I did know is I didn't want to keep my life on hold any longer. For 6 years, this map ruled me, and I was so close. So close. So I chose to push ahead. I wrote the email. I made the store public. I scheduled that email. I prayed to the universe, and I went to bed. Now, the email went out around dawn in Melbourne, afternoon in the States. And I remember standing on my balcony in the sunrise, afraid to check the website. Just knowing I had actually done it after so long, that almost felt like enough. I didn't need to see the sales. But when I did check them, I was very happy with what I saw. Years of hard work was finally paying off. And so many wonderful people, so patient with me as I took forever, were finally going to get this map. Or at least I was going to try. And that was a great day. I called family and friends. I left my phone at home and took a long walk through the park, along the river. And every moment was just abundant with meaning. I got home, the orders were still rolling in, and I was so happy. But then I looked out my window towards the airport, and I saw something I'd never seen before in Melbourne. There wasn't a single plane in the sky. And then I was filled with dread. So the next 2 months, I must admit, are a blur. I moved into rapid action with fulfillment and constant fear of my suppliers shutting down. I ordered crazy amounts of mailing tubes and stored them in my parking space downstairs. My car went outside. Everything from the packaging to the limited edition certificates to the embossed stamp that I hit every print with, all of that still had to be designed, sourced. I worked every single day without rest until 2 or 3 a.m. for months. I rolled the first couple of maps on the floor using my trolley for a tissue paper dispenser until my carpenter friend saved the day and he built me this table. Melbourne went into lockdown, and as I live alone, I was in a bubble of madness. But I kept going, and I think that map taught me a lot about keeping going and about bubbles of madness. I managed to ship out every last order by myself by early June. And then I was in a place that I'd been dreaming of for 6 years. Well, that might not look like it, but but yeah, the North America map was no longer hanging over me, taunting me. So I knew exactly what time it was. It was time to start a new map. That's what I was doing all of this for, and the pull of the blank canvas, it never ceases. So first I needed to overhaul the studio. This is how it used to look. I must have had such tunnel vision all those years drawing, because how I did not see that my desk was actually made for a 10-year-old. I couldn't even fit my knees under it. But I never really, all I did was draw the map. So anyway, I've got a good desk now. My chair was from the side of the road, and it would slowly depress after 10 minutes. So I had to keep raising it. So that changed. And I swapped those milk crates there for an easel. So here's how it's looking now. And so I got the studio right, started my new map, and it is tentatively titled Wild World. Although I might go with Wild Earth, we'll see. But it's all about our natural world. No borders, countries, cities, but a lot of animals and physical geography. And I don't really have time to talk about it today at all. It's still very new. But I do know one thing. I cannot wait at next year's NACIS to finally give my first NACIS talk that is not about the North America map. It will be about this one. And this one should be done by then. We'll see. But thank you, all my friends, for joining me on the North America journey from its early days to here. And I hope this talk has given you a few things to think about. My business is very bespoke to me, but a lot of these principles apply across the board. And you're welcome to reach out to me privately if you have any questions. But I guess my message above all is work hard and try to keep it simple. Thank you so much, everyone.